Stand to your feet. Stand to your feet. Hallelujah.
Thank you very much. First, give an honor to God and give our Pastor Omar a big hand. Give him a big hand. Several days ago, I guess a couple of weeks ago, Attorney Ben Crump called me and told me about what happened to TRAYFORD. Because of the hurricane, a lot of attention in this area was shifted. And we all know the other causes that many of us were involved in. Just 2 weeks ago tomorrow, we had tens of thousands march with us in Washington around this issue of policing. And I said to Attorney Crump, I said, I'm with it, and I'll even have some of the activists. I saw some of the footage of them marching here. I have them on my TV show, and we'll support them. He said, no, I really want you to go and let the family know and the people know in that city that we are with them. If you just go, it might let them know the local activists got backup if they need it. We didn't come to displace them, we come to back them up. And the more I heard about Trey's story, the more I said, well, let me see if we can work this out. As God would have it, Pastor Omar, I called one of my supporters and said, you know, I have to go to Lafayette, and I know y'all know Lafayette, if you ain't in the neighborhood, you can't get to Lafayette easy. He said, don't worry about it. I'll send a plane for you, bring you down and back. And ironically, Brother Omar, Ben Crump coming commercial, he missed his plane. But I got me a rich brother's plane, so I'm all right. But I wanted to come for a couple of reasons. One is I want Lafayette to know that this is a disgrace. And just like we stood, I did the eulogy for George Floyd, Eric Garner, all of them. Just like we stood with them, I want you to know, just like I got here today, I'll be here anytime they need me. Lafayette is going to do justice for Trey. Don't be condemning the activists. Talking about the young folk out of control. The police out of control. You gonna shoot 9 or 10 times at a man. And then talk about later there was some knife in the park or somewhere else. We're not asking for favors. Do for us what you would do for anybody else in Lafayette. If some black cops shot a white child, a white young man, a white barber, 9 or 10 times, we wouldn't have to march downtown. We would have to have rallies. Don't ask us, what do you want us to do? You know what to do. Follow the law. Follow the same procedures you follow for anybody else. If a black young man or woman in Lafayette breaks the law, you arrest them. if they tell you the story, wait a minute, wasn't like that, they say probable cause, tell it to the judge. Is that not what they say? Well, you got 9 or 10 shots. You got someone that was not life-threatening. That is probable cause. Tell the police to tell it to the judge. You need to bring them before the bar of justice. It ain't no long thing. Why do we need studies when it comes to us? Why do we need to have healing when it comes to us? You can't heal without dealing with the injury. It always kills me when we go in the city talk about, Reverend, we need to heal. And the folk in the waiting room healing, and the folk that is injured is sitting up in the operating room with no doctor. You can't heal till you go in the room with those injured. And this has happened before, right here. And this needs to be the place we stop it. Well, Reverend Al, you're right, we need more training. No, we need executing justice. Training, you know how to act on the other side of town. I don't understand how you so trained on one side of town and forget your training when it comes to outside of town. Problem is not the training. Problem is you think you can get away with it when it's us. Well, let's look at Trey's background. No, let's look at the policeman's background. Trey didn't shoot nobody 9 or 10 times. Tell me if the officer has complaints against them. Tell me if they got an issue of brutality. Trey don't have to qualify to be alive. Whatever his background, it wasn't on his back when y'all start shooting. You didn't know his background when you shot him. You knew he was a black man and you thought you'd get away with it. And I come all the way from New York to tell you, you're not getting away this time. You may not have cared about Trey, but we care. Because Trey could have been my little brother. Trey could have been my son. And until I stop it with Trey, it's going to soon get to me. Enough is enough. Lafayette needs to stand up and do what's right. Guy asked me, why are you in this town? No town should do this. They never thought this family would get the best civil rights lawyers. They never thought they'd get folks like us here. Well, we here. And the community stand together. I commend Pastor Omar for what he did and said. And let me tell you something. There are a lot of people in the clergy, and I've been a preacher like he said all my life, and a lot of preachers wouldn't risk even having the funeral here. Y'all give him credit. A lot of pastors would not have had that. They'd be afraid they'd be in trouble downtown. I can't have that in my church. And then y'all talking about Al Sharpton come out. I can't have that. We got too many punks in the pulpit. Omar didn't say that. I said that. But you can't serve God and be afraid. Fear and faith don't match. If you gonna represent what's right, you got to stand up against the wicked, no matter who the wicked is, no matter what title the wicked got. The wicked needs to meet righteous folk with no fear. Well, you know, Rev Mal, I read the Bible different. Well, what Bible you read? If Moses could stand up to Pharaoh, if Joshua could continue to the promised land, if David could stand up to Goliath, if Daniel could tell Nebuchadnezzar what God said, if Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego could stand up, if Daniel could talk to Belshazzar, then Al Sharpton could come to Lafayette and say, this ain't right. Now, if you scared, say you scared. Don't act like God told you something he didn't told nobody else. Say you scared and sit down and shut up and let some preachers that ain't scared stand up and say what need to be said. We're not haters. We're not for burning down the town. But we are not for ignoring competing forces that don't want to do what's right. Omar's right, we shouldn't burn down our own city, but you shouldn't be shooting us either. You want the black leaders in Lafayette to condemn the violence. You want the family to condemn the violence, and they have. They have condemned the looting. But when you going to condemn the wrong police shooting? You can't have it one way. You have to address the problem. The problem is that you got some police that feel they are the law rather than they have to abide by the law. Well, Reverend, you got to understand they're human. They are human, but they've been given more power than other humans. When you put that badge on to represent the state and the state give you a gun, we don't expect you to act like every other human. If you can't control yourself, then you ought not be on the force. And if you break the law, you need to pay like everybody else. How do we stop police brutality? Same way you stop youth crime. Perk walk a few cops, and a few cops will know they're going to have to pay a price. And then, you know, I rode through, and maybe the driver had the wrong route. But rode through, see these Confederate statues. I'm glad you brought it up. Let me tell you something. The only reason a Confederate is even in history is they fought and killed to keep us enslaved. Wasn't like they discovered something scientific and happened to be Confederates. The only reason they are saluted is because they fought to maintain slavery. Even if that ain't bad enough, they fought to overthrow the government. What country do you go in that they have statues honoring the people that tried to overthrow them? It was a Confederate sympathizer that killed Lincoln. And you honoring the Confederates? Talking about it's your history? It's a history of slavery and debauchery and of reducing God's children to 3/5 of a man. And then you want us to pay tax so that people can clean and take care of and secure the statues of slave masters. You want to have a statue, put it up in your house. But don't ask me to pay to maintain a park that got a slave master at my expense. And act like we got to sit and talk about it. No, we got to tear it down. Because that same mentality is what makes people think they can do what they want to us and that nothing will happen. Well, I want y'all to know that we are not going to let this go. I'm committed to Ben and the legal team to be wherever they need me on this case. I ain't talking about everywhere else. I'm talking about Trey. I want the family to know that we are with you nationally. And I want these local activists to know no matter who criticizes you, march anyhow. They talked about Dr. King. He kept on marching. They talked about all of those in the days of the 60s and the 70s, 80s. They kept on marching. Don't let nobody tell you to keep quiet. They say we need peace. The price for peace is justice. They don't want peace. They want quiet. They're between quiet and peace. They want you to shut up and suffer in silence. No, you don't have to be violent. You don't have to burn, but you don't have to be quiet either. Every city hall meeting, every community meeting, you stand up and make them hear you. And make them know that Trey needs justice. And if they cut you off the local news, call Uncle Al. I'll put you on the news. Because this has gone too far. Lastly, I read Trey's obituary. Trey was a barber. Trey did things with his hand. Trey wasn't no big shot. Trey didn't have a lot of degrees. Trey wasn't the head of no big community institution. Trey was somebody that you would think wasn't special. I look at some of the young brothers sitting here. Some of them probably never had jackets to wear to go to funerals. I went to the restroom when I got here, and a couple of them coming out. Trey's friends, regular brothers in the street. Well, I understand that, because that's how I grew up. See, I didn't come from the side. I'm not talking about the white side of town. I'm talking about the black middle class side of town. Some of you bougie woodgies. I grew up on welfare with food stamps. Didn't want my friends to know. But somewhere I read, Reverend referred to it, I wrote a book about it. The Bible said that the stone that the builder rejected became the cornerstone. There is nothing valuable about a penthouse if you don't have a cornerstone holding up the building. And it's the rejected stones, like Trey, like some of y'all, like me, that's going to make a difference. You big, highfalutin folk with big titles that ain't got no function. You can tell me your title, but you can't tell me what you do. You claim you got so much juice. Well, if you got so much juice, why can't you get something done? Or I know the folk downtown would tell the folk downtown to do something for us then. Big symbols with no substance. Splurting around Lafayette playing Super Negro. Do something. Otherwise, God will take the rejected stones. These kids that you think ain't nothing, he takes rejects and builds a whole new world order. It took David, a rejected stone. His daddy didn't even think he was nothing. Prophet came to Jesse's house, said, one of your sons will be the new leader. Jesse called in all his older boys. Went through them. One could speak well. One looked like a leader. The other was well formed. But God kept looking past them. He said, no, it's not them. And as they got ready to leave, he said, do you have any more sons? He said, oh, I got one more, but he's just a shepherd boy. And as an afterthought, they went out to the field and got little David. Some of y'all know what it is to be an afterthought. Nobody thought you'd be nothing. Nobody thought you're worth anything. An afterthought. But if you fast forward when they were getting ready to fight the Philistines, and they had a giant named Goliath, all of the folk with high military signs was afraid to fight. All of those that had been to military training was afraid to fight. All of those that had all the ranks and titles was afraid to fight. But the little shepherd boy, the boy that nobody thought would be nothing, the boy that daddy didn't even call in the living room, he said, I'll fight the giant. The head guy, Saul, said, wait a minute, you just a kid. Why you think you're going to fight? He said, well, you know I was just a shepherd boy. I didn't go to seminary. But one day I was taking care of daddy's sheep. And a lion and a bear came up. And somehow I got the courage to fight the lion and the bear. And the same God that helped me with the lion and the bear, that same God will help me fight Goliath. I come to Lafayette to tell you the same God that stood with Rosa Parks, the same God that stood with Martin Luther King, the same God that stood with Obama is still on the throne. And that same God wants justice for Trey, justice for Trey, justice for Trey. God will, God will, God will.